One more session to go before we will have a break for tea. Thank you very much for your continued attention. This is a different session. It will be provocative, I don't know, but it will be stimulating and thoughtful, I'm sure, having heard Connell before. So, say no more. The next half hour, really interesting.
Roger. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to come here and speak today and share my story. And I was great, so I'm always really nervous about public speaking, but that really calmed me down, so thanks for that. Some great talks there, and what Stephanie and Sue have mentioned, it's fun enough will get integrated in my talk. So, my name is Connell, and I was diagnosed with kidney cancer back in over 5 years ago now, back in March 2013. Just a month before, in February, I got up one morning and, as normal, went into the bathroom. And as I was urinating, I looked down and noticed I was passing blood. So I came out of the bathroom, my wife's in my face, and she says, "What's wrong?" I says, "I've just passed blood." And I went downstairs and drank as much water as I could to get the urge to urinate again soon. The urge came again. I went back into the bathroom and, looking down, I was just passing blood. My wife panicked and says, "We need to go to hospital." But being the typical man, I says, "No, we'll just wait and see how it goes throughout the day." It was a Sunday, I says, "and I'll go to my GP tomorrow morning." As the day went on, the blood became more and more diluted, and by the afternoon it was more or less back to normal. But on the Monday, I made an appointment with my GP, and the GP then referred me to hospital for what was called a one-stop shop, where we'd have an ultrasound, an x-ray, a camera down my urethra to check my bladder, and to see the consultant. So it transpired that day that I had a mass growing from my kidney. They says it looked about over 6 centimetres. I said, "Well, what does that mean?" They says, "We can't determine anything just yet, we have to send you for a CT scan." So I went for a CT scan, and then a couple of weeks later I had an appointment with the consultant. My wife and I went into the appointment, and the consultant says to me, he had a very serious and solemn look about him, and he says, "So what do you know?" I says, I've got a mass on my kidney." And he looked me straight in the eye and gave me the words that you never ever want to hear: "It's cancer." I said, "No." I says, "It can't be." He says, "Why can't it?" I says, "I'm only 32. I says, "There's no history of it in my immediate family, and I haven't had any more symptoms." I says, "How sure are you?" And he says, "It's cancer." So I says, "What now?" He says, "We need to get it out, my kidney and the tumour," which was 6.7 centimetres at this point. I says, "When?" And he says, "Monday." So I said, "Right, okay." They managed to squeeze me into theatre. So I filled out all the relevant paperwork, the pre-op stuff, and just as my wife and I were about to leave his office, I actually made a joke with him saying, "Make sure you get a good night's sleep on Sunday night so you're prepared for the surgery on the Monday," just trying to make light of the situation. Afterwards, my wife and I went home and started to call around, our family. I live in Derby, my wife's from Derby, but I was calling all my parents, my family and friends up in Glasgow. And it really started to sink in at that point, and I started to feel really down. And we just had a 4-month-old daughter at that point as well. So my world was coming crashing down, and so my parents, they came down from Glasgow to help out because of the surgery. I was going to be laid up for a while. And my wife's parents came to the house, to help us out. I remember going out for a walk with my father-in-law, and I was really down. I was saying to my father-in-law, giving him instructions to look after my wife and daughter should I not get through it. But I went for the surgery on the Monday, and just before it was anaesthetised, the anaesthetist says, "Do you need to see the consultant about anything before I knock you out?" I said, "Yeah, if you don't mind, could you call him in?" So the consultant came through, all prepped for surgery. He says, "Is everything okay?" I says, "I think so." He says, "There's probably nothing to worry about." I said, "But I've got this lump on the side of my head, is there anything to worry about?" And he had a look and says, "No, it just looks like a sebaceous cyst." He says, "Don't worry about it, you've got bigger things going on just now." So I did, just put it in the back of my mind and went ahead with the surgery. I then woke up in recovery, and the good news was they'd managed to do a laparoscopy before because of the physical size of the tumour and the kidney. He says he might have to make a wider incision, but he would try laparoscopy. So he did manage to do a laparoscopy, and so my recovery time had been quicker. Now, a couple of weeks later, after I was discharged from hospital, I had an appointment with the consultant as a follow-up, and he had a more happier demeanour about him this time. And he says he was really happy with how the surgery went. He says the cancer, when he was in there, it looked like everything was confined to the kidney, and when the histology report came back, it looked like a couple of lymph nodes were okay, so he was really happy with it. And he says, we'll just scan you every 12 months now. So that was great, it was music to my ears, but I says to him, I says, what can I now do to benefit myself to make sure that this never happens again? And he says, oh, go back and do what you were doing before, you were fit and healthy before. I says, well, obviously not, if I've developed cancer. So, seeing the look of desperation in my face, he must have thought he had to give me something. So he says, well, some people that this happens to, they tend to turn vegetarian. So he's probably no idea how much that little golden nugget of information would go on and change my life. So I went back home and I hit the books and got research and looking into the benefits of a vegetarian diet, which then led me on to a vegan, plant-based diet, all the benefits of juicing, blending smoothies, and I came across a couple of health retreats. I came across the Gerson Institute in Mexico, I came across the Hopkins Institute in Florida, and how they had fantastic success rates with cancer patients. And I couldn't afford to go to any of these places, and I've never been insured anyway. So I looked around to see if there was anywhere in the UK, and I found a place down in Cornwall that followed a similar programme to the Hippocrates Institute. So I booked to go down there for a week, and it was fantastic. My days consisted of having shots of wheatgrass in the morning, green juices, carrot and apple juices. For lunch and evening meal, I would have a raw plant-based meals. I would do yoga, Reiki. I was doing a lot of studying and reading a lot of books, understanding all the science behind this. And then the third day, I woke up and I was ill, and so much that I couldn't even lift my head from the pillow without throwing up. And the woman who ran the retreat came in with my morning juices, and I says, I'm really sorry. I says, but I don't think this diet's for me. It's making me ill. And she started to laugh. And I says, I'm glad my suffering amuses you. She says, no, it's not that. She says, this is a good sign. She says, because you've just been eating organic, plant-based diet, juicing, she says, this is now your body detoxing all the rubbish that you've accumulated. She says, it always tends to happen around about the third day. She says, please stick with it. She says, drink as much water as you can and try and flush it through. So I did that, and I went to bed early that night. I felt terrible the whole day. But then the day after, I woke up and I felt great. My energy levels were through the roof, so much so I decided to go out for a run, and I hadn't done any exercise really until since before my surgery. So I went for a run. I went for about 6 or 7 miles, and I felt like Forrest Gump. I felt like I could keep going because my energy levels were so high, but I didn't want to push it. So being there for a week, it really helped me understand, give me the foundations that I needed in order to progress, live a healthier lifestyle. But when I got back home, I was still concerned about this lump in the side of my head, so I went to see my GP, and again he says, just looks like a sebaceous cyst. He says, don't worry about it. I says, well, I am worried. I says, with everything I've been through, I just want to have a clean bill of health now and not have to worry about any lumps. So he agreed with me, and they sent me to the local day hospital to have it removed. And then the day I had it removed, the consultant even there says, just looks like a sebaceous cyst. He says, but we'll remove it anyway. It was sent off to the lab, and then a couple of weeks later, I was in the office at work, and my phone rang, and it was my consultant secretary saying that he would like to see me. What's it regarding? I said. She didn't say. I says, when? She's tomorrow. So straight away, alarm bell started to ring. So my wife and I went along to the appointment, and so the consultant says to me, I says to him, there's something wrong, isn't there? And he says, yes. He says, that's sebaceous cyst we thought you had. He says, it's turned out to be a metastasis of your kidney cancer. So I slumped back in my chair, and my wife was in bed. She says, what does that mean? I says, it's spread. He nodded his head and said, yeah. So I says, what now? He says, well, I'm going to have to refer you to oncology now. He says, and they'll probably want to start you on some form of chemo treatment. So I had an appointment the following week with the oncologist, and at that point he was saying things to me like, I'd gone from having stage 3 kidney cancer to now having stage 4. It was terminal, incurable. Told me the prognosis, it looked to be aggressive, so the prognosis could be as little as 12 months. And he says, but even if you survive longer than 12 months, statistics are that the 5-year survival rate for stage 4 kidney cancer is only 5% from initial diagnosis. And I've even referenced that there. That's up on the Cancer Research UK page. So I was due to start treatment, and kidney cancer doesn't respond well to traditional chemo. So they were planning for me to start, it's called a tyrosine kinase inhibitor. And what that does is it works by preventing 2 things, proliferation and angiogenesis. So proliferation occurs when cell divides to make more cells, which cancer does. And angiogenesis is the growth of new blood vessels, and again, which tumours need to feed themselves. So before I started the treatment, I was referred to a clinical psychologist to discuss everything that had been happening, and I was not ready for that appointment at all. It was in that appointment that she was asking me if I had a will made up, and we got into funeral arrangements. And at that point I was only 33. I was saying, this can't be happening. And I was referred to a hospice for complementary therapies while I was on the treatment. I was even put in palliative care, and I started to plan my own funeral. Now I remember I'd been thinking about it, and as I say, my wife's from Derby, and she was only 31-year-old at the time. I says to my wife, listen, you're not going to be visiting a graveyard every weekend. And I says, and I don't want that for you. I says, so I'm going to get buried back in Glasgow where all my family are buried. And my wife would then start to get really upset and say, no, you can't leave me and our daughter. You have to get buried here in Derby. So, right, so I would start thinking about getting buried in Derby, and I would speak to my family and friends in Glasgow, and my parents would be in bits then say, no, you have to get buried in Glasgow where all your family's buried. And the stress that was causing me was unreal, where I was going to get buried. So at that point I said, instead of focusing on where I'm going to get buried, I'm going to focus all my efforts into beating this. So I started the treatment, and I must admit my quality of life plummeted. The side effects were horrendous. I had chronic fatigue, I had painful hands and feet, underneath my fingernails were all been bruised. It was even a struggle to hold a cup of tea. I had a lot of taste changes. I couldn't taste any of my food basically. I had a sore dry mouth, a swollen tongue, a loss of appetite because of all this. The effects on my appearance, I didn't lose my hair, but my hair turned silver. My skin went grey, my eyes went black. I was like a walking corpse. And I had a major drop in my immune system. And a story on this, they gave me what was called a rapid response card. And this rapid response card says, if I felt generally unwell, flu-like symptoms, or a temperature above 37.5 degrees, I had to call this number straight away. I remember waking up one morning and I didn't feel great, and I had a high temperature, so I called the number and they told me to come straight into hospital. I went into hospital, straight away they hooked me up to an antibiotic drip, and they took lots of blood from me, sent it off to the lab. About 2 hours later, the nurse came back and says to my wife, is there any chance you can go and get an overnight bag for Connell? I says, why? She says, well, your white blood cell count has dropped to 0.98, and they said anything below 1 is dangerous, because basically you have no immune system. And I got really angry at this point, and I says, that's your treatment that's doing that to me. I says, it's not the cancer. And this was a Thursday, and it was our daughter's first birthday the following week, and we were having a party for her that weekend, and I had a lot of family and friends coming down from Scotland. So I says to the nurse, I says, I'm sorry, I says, but with all due respect, I will not be staying in hospital and missing my daughter's first birthday party. So she told me, she says, you have no immune system. She says, it's not advisable to be around a children's birthday party. And I says, well, that's the chance I'm going to take. So I left, and she says, if anything changes, please do not hesitate to come into hospital because you have zero immune system. So my family and friends came down, we had our daughter's birthday party, and I started to question the treatment because my scan before it was actually showed that it was clear, and the treatment was just as a precaution because they thought it was going to be aggressive, just to give me an extra few months prognosis. But I decided that I was going to come off the treatment, and all my family and friends were saying, don't be so bloody silly, you have to listen to the doctors. And I said, I understand that. I said, but I have to listen to my own body and my own intuition, and it's telling me to stop it. Now, I would never ever advise anyone to stop their treatment, but this is just something that I felt was right for me. I discussed it with my oncologist, and he says, no, it's not advisable. I made a second opinion to see a professor down in London, professor of renal cancer, and he agreed with me that my quality of life had plummeted, and it wasn't much of a life for me at that point. So he agreed. He says, I'll make a deal with you. If your next scan's clear in the December, he says, I'll back you up, that you can come off the treatment and have a break from it. So I finished the treatment. It was Christmas Eve. I finished the treatment. My scan was just before that, and then my results were early in January. On the Christmas day, I was in bed most of the day, ill, the worst Christmas I've ever had. And then the early January, I went for my appointment for my scan results. The oncologist came in, he says, great news, scan's clear, and he proceeded to write the 4th cycle of my treatment. And I says, sorry, I said, but with all due respect, I am coming off the treatment. And again, he told me it was not advisable. But I told him about the appointment I had with for the second opinion in London, and the professor and him actually knew each other personally, but it was clear at that point that we hadn't had any communication. So he says he would speak to the professor, and we rearranged the appointment, and I went back a few days later. He spoke to him, and they agreed I would take a break from the treatment, and at that point I was going to take matters into my own hands and do everything that I'd been studying for myself. So I looked into detoxing my body, and one of the first things I came across was fasting. I think it's mentioned this morning about fasting. Now, fasting is a lost process. You only need to look back in history at the people that fasted, Jesus, Buddha, etc. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. So by fasting, the body's not using energy digesting, so it can go to work healing. And you only need to look at animals. When they're injured or ill, they instinctively know to fast. And some of the benefits of fasting is an elimination of toxins, which I needed because the treatment I was on was highly toxic. Rejuvenates blood and organs, improves digestion, one of the most natural ways to detox and cleanse the body. Boosts the immune system, again, which I really needed. Increases energy levels, weight loss, improves mental clarity, and it triggers something called autolysis, which is when you're not eating proteins, your body then starts to scavenge itself for proteins and auto-digests boils, tumours, etc. So I started to do regular fasting, and then I also came across the benefits of coffee enemas. Now, if you'd have told me before I was ill that I'd be shoving a hose up my backside, I would have laughed and said, no way. But the benefits of coffee enemas I'd read were far outweighed the discomfort. And coffee enemas, it's a staple protocol for the Gerson Institute, and the fantastic success rate they had with cancer patients. So I started to do regular coffee enemas, and what these do is they detox and restore the liver. They increase antioxidant activity. Your liver produces an enzyme called GST, which is highly antioxidant, and by having coffee enemas, this can actually raise that by up to 600%. Improve gut health, improve circulation, cleanses and hydrates the colon, help reduce pain. Florence Nightingale actually treated a lot of her patients with coffee enemas. Eliminates parasites and yeast, improve digestion, and it cleanses the blood. The blood circulates around your body every 3 minutes. Now, when you have a coffee enema, you retain that coffee for 20 to 30 minutes, so you can think of coffee enemas as a form of dialysis. I also then came across the benefits of far-infrared saunas and hypothermia. So your skin is your body's largest organ, and the only way you can detox your skin is by sweat. And so the benefits of sweating out toxins, they've got long historical traditions by many cultures. The ancient Egyptians, the Romans with their steam baths, the Native American Indians with their sweat lodges, Nordics with their saunas, etc. And saunas, they help eliminate toxins which we absorb throughout the day, lower blood pressure because they dilate your veins, and again that's something I need because one of the side effects I had high blood pressure on the treatment. Boost white blood cell production, again, which I needed. They also burn calories. It's been shown that, studies have shown that 30 minutes on far infrared sauna, you can burn up to 600 calories, and enhances the blood circulation, getting essential nutrients and oxygen to the cells. Hypothermia can be described as fever therapy, and the fever is the body's own healing mechanism where it raises temperatures where viruses, etc. can no longer survive. I also had my amalgam fillings removed. I had around 8 in my mouth, and 2 of those were showing signs of leakage. Now, amalgam fillings are made up of 50% mercury, which is a highly toxic element. It's shipped to dental practices as a hazardous material, and special precautions are required to get rid of it. Mercury is also a neurotoxin that can affect the brain, the central nervous system and the kidneys. And while I was having them removed, I would take an Ayurvedic supplement called Shilajit, and how that works is the fulvic acid in the Shilajit bonds to these toxic metals in your body, and you release them through the urine and faeces. Now, I had been doing all this and I felt great, and I thought I'd cracked it. I thought I was invincible at this point, and I started to take on a lot more stress because I thought I'd beat it. I had a couple of promotions within work. I started to study nutritional therapy through the College of Naturopathic Medicine on top of my stressful job, just so I could understand the science behind everything I was doing. And to top it all off, my wife and I decided for a fresh start we would move house. And the house that we bought was sadly in a state of disrepair, so we had a lot of builder's work to deal with as well. So my stress levels were just through the roof. And needless to say, 2 years later, when we'd found it spread initially, I was diagnosed with a brain tumour. So how that came about, I had a really bad migraine, and my wife was saying to me, you have to ring the hospital. And I would get really upset with my wife saying, I'm not ringing the hospital every time I have a headache or any aches or pains. But the migraine lasted around 3 days, and my wife kept on at me to ring the hospital. So for an easy life, I decided to ring the hospital, and they sent me for an MRI scan. A couple of weeks later, I had an appointment with the consultant who initially had diagnosed me and had removed my kidney. And he says to me, he says, how are the headaches? I says, I'm sorry. I says, I feel a bit of a fraud. I says, it was only one headache that I had. I says, but it was really bad. It lasted 3 days. I says, and I've never experienced anything like it. And I even says, to tell you the truth, I only called to stop my wife nagging at me. So he turned his screen around and he says, well, it's just as well you listen to your wife. He says, because we found this, and he pointed to a 14mm brain tumour on my right temporal lobe. And he was surprised that I hadn't been having any of the side effects that he thought I would be having, you know, like with my mobility, memory, etc. And although my wife would probably say I do have a problem with my memory, but I need to be selective. But so what now? They had discussed it at their multidisciplinary team meeting a couple of days before it. And he said, we think the best form of treatment for you is to have something called stereotactic radiosurgery. And I says, with all due respect, I don't want to be having radiotherapy in my brain. And he says, I understand that. He says, it's not traditional radiotherapy, it's targeted. He says, but before you can qualify for it, he says, we need to send you for a CT scan. He says, because unfortunately, if it's spread anywhere else, you won't qualify for it then. So I had my CT scan, and thankfully that was clear. And I went up to Sheffield to have the stereotactic radiosurgery. Now what they do is they bolt a metal frame to your skull, and then they send you for an MRI scan. And that MRI scan pinpoints the exact location of the tumour in relation to the frame. They then bolt the frame into the gamma knife machine with you in it. There's no room for manoeuvre. And in the gamma knife machine, there's 192 gamma knives around the circumference of this machine, each firing a low-grade radiation to where the tumour is. And it doesn't damage any healthy tissues, but when it comes to a point, it's very high-grade radiation. Now, I was told it wasn't guaranteed that it would work, it was just something that they wanted to try. So I went ahead with it anyway, and when they gave me the MRI scan, I just asked the nurse, I says, can you tell me what size the brain tumour is now? And she says, yeah, it's 22mm. I says, 22mm? I says, it was 14 before. I says, it's only been 6 weeks. I says, so my brain tumour's increased 8mm in the space of 6 weeks. And she quickly dismissed it, saying, oh, it might just be that our machine's more detailed than the machine that you had yours done on. but it since transpires that it had actually grown quite quick in that time, and they were worried that it was going to be really aggressive. But they also said if the brain tumour was over 30 millimetres that they wouldn't carry it out, but it was 22, so I went ahead with the surgery. And as soon as I got home, I then really started to step up the protocols. And a lot of people had been asking me what my take on that. A lot of people had been contacting me through word of mouth from the organic farm shop about my story, and a lot of people started to ask me what my take is on cannabis oil. And I would always say, I can't comment. I said, I've never ever took cannabis. I said, I only comment on what I've done before. But I then started to research cannabis oil, and I read a few medical papers and a few studies that were being done. And I must admit, what I'd seen was phenomenal, especially for brain tumours, because your brain has a blood-brain barrier, and not a lot of things can pass the blood-brain barrier, not a lot of nutrients can get through there, but cannabis oil can. And I found that with the research I was doing, your body has its own endocannabinoid system, and when that's in balance, it balances a lot of other systems within your body. And the molecular receptors CB1 and CB2 are designed to receive cannabinoids, in particular CBD and THC. Now, Dr. Christine Sanchez at the Complutense University was one of the first to discover the anti-tumour effects of cannabis oil, and I read a couple of her papers. Now, CBD, that's the legal part. You can actually buy that in most health food shops. Holland and Barra now sell CBD. And what this does is it interferes with cellular communications, and it promotes apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. THC, on the other hand, that's the psychoactive counterpart. That's the bit that gives you that stone feeling, the bit that's illegal. But studies have shown that that reduces tumour growth and slows down rates of metastases. And the studies that show the most potent effects against tumour growth are when they're both combined, although they're both beneficial individually as well. And there's actually a big study going on just now that I know about in Nottingham. And I spoke to a neuropharmacologist who was a friend of the family, and he had recommended something called cesium therapy. Now, cesium chloride is a natural treatment, it's a natural salt that's extremely alkaline, and this was pioneered by a physicist named Dr. Keith Brewer, whose main focus was on the behaviour of cell membranes. And what he'd found is cancer cells' outer membranes become often impenetrable due to being inflamed by toxins or carcinogens, which then harden. When they harden, not a lot of nutrients can get into the cells, or even oxygen for that matter. So that being the case, the cells then start to ferment glucose for energy rather than oxidising it. This then drops the pH of the cells, and your body becomes acidic. The cancer thrives in an acidic environment. But what the cesium therapy does, it actually gets passed through that hardened cell wall into the cancer cells, and it raises the pH from around 4 to around 8. And this is like a beacon to your own immune system to attack the cancer cells. So it's not actually cesium that attacks the cancer cells, it's just like a beacon to your own immune system. Although it's an actual treatment, it still requires monitoring, and I was in touch with a vendor in America who had got it from. So you need to have blood tests done every 2 weeks to monitor your serum potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium and uric acid levels, because the cesium can affect these. So, I mean, my potassium had dropped because the cesium was drawing some of my serum potassium into the cancer cells, so I had to then take a potassium supplement. And other protocols that I follow are liposomal vitamin C. I had read about the benefits of intravenous vitamin C high dose and how it could attack cancer cells. I then I take liposomal vitamin C every day because you can take it at home. You don't need to go and get hooked up to intravenous drips. Hot and cold therapy. I've spoke earlier about the far-infrared saunas. What I tend to do, I have a far-infrared sauna every other day. Then I come out and straight away I go into a shower in its coldest setting, or I have an ice bath. And this gets my circulation going, drains my lymph system, and have oxygen therapy. I'm lucky enough I've got an oxygen concentrator at home, but there's hyperbaric chambers scattered all throughout the UK now, so even having a hyperbaric chamber, it's beneficial to get as much oxygen into you, because cancer thrives in an anaerobic environment where there's no oxygen. I've carried out something called the Andreas Moritz liver cleanse a few times. Now this isn't for the faint-hearted, this is like having liver surgery without the medical intervention. It's basically you pass a lot of stones that have accumulated in the bile ducts of the liver, making the liver work more efficiently. Essiac-T, I take Essiac-T, this was pioneered by a nurse back in the 1920s called Rennie Cassie, which is Essiac spelled backwards. She had a fantastic success rate with cancer patients back then. I go for regular spiritual healing, do meditation, mindfulness practices, which I think are just as important as nutrition, as getting the mindset right. Because, having been diagnosed with cancer, and they say you've only got 12 months to live, sometimes if you think I've only got 12 months to live, your body will say okay and start shutting down, so it's important to get the mindset right. Acupuncture, I go for regular acupuncture to help get the energy flowing around my meridians. Colon hydrotherapy, I go for regular colonics. Again, if you'd told me I'd be having a hose up my backside before I was ill, I would have laughed, but the benefits, as I say, far outweigh the discomfort. I do a lot of breathing and stretching exercises, do regular yoga. Take a lot of supplements that I take are digestive enzymes, probiotics. I eat a lot of fermented food because, as Stephanie says, this your gut health is linked to your immune system, so you need to get your gut health right. Apricot kernels, another thing I take for the vitamin B17, the lateral, which again has been shown to attack cancer cells. Frankincense oil, I take that, rub it on the roof of my mouth. Again, it can pass the blood-brain barrier, and again, it's been shown to be beneficial for tumours. I take turmeric and black pepper tincture, like someone says it spoke about this morning, and this tincture is highly anti-inflammatory, highly antioxidant. Exercise, do regular exercise. Now, depending on your stage of fitness, even just going out for a walk in nature, breathing in fresh air, get your heart rate going, it's so beneficial. As human beings, we're designed to move, we're not designed to be sedentary, which a lot of us are these days with work, etc. But exercise is highly important. Pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. I do this, and I borrowed the machine, I've currently got it at home, and I do this most days. So PEMF replicates the Earth's natural magnetic field. Nothing happens in the body without an electromagnetic exchange between cells. There's actually been over 10,000 studies done by NASA on pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. So again, I do this regularly. And I make my own molecular hydrogen water, which again is highly antioxidant, and it's one of the smallest molecules that can get into the cells, hydrate the cells and remove the waste. So, sorry if I have to rush through all these, but I'm just conscious of time. But from everything I've been through, I decided to write a book called Save a Life, The Will to Survive and Thrive. It's currently available as an ebook on Amazon. You can download for any device. It's for sale for $9.99. I've got some paperbacks with me today if anyone was interested in a copy. And I mean, look, I don't know what my future holds, and it's difficult for me to make any long-term plans. So there's always a high risk of the cancer coming back for me, and so I need to keep looking after myself to make sure that I'm here for my wife and daughter and my family, so that none of them have to say goodbye to me just yet. And hopefully on my journey I can help as many people as I can as well. So that's it. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
I said it would be interesting, didn't I? Unique. Thanks, Connell. Thank you very much. Food for thought. A lot of information this afternoon. We're going to go now for a tea break, and then we'll come back for a panel discussion.